Got it? Yeah.
I guess I could have. Huh? Okay, I'll make it.
The mud hole and
Remember it did last night? What's that?
Hey, Philip.
His chair is on the desk.
Did y'all sign that sheet?
Oh.
Did you sign that sheet?
I'm afraid that would happen.
yeah.
He said he said that.
Okay.
Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mayor Corbett. Here. Alderman Matthews.
Here.
Alderman Spicer.
Here.
Alderman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Wall. Mr. Whited.
Here.
Mrs. Collado. Mrs. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
We need to adopt the agenda. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I can miss Dolly.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, left Dolly off.
Don't do that.
I was sleeping.
You're like, I'm out of here.
Public comment period. We've got, sorry if I don't pronounce the name, Rick?
DeVasilia.
Thank you.
You're the only one of those in town, probably.
Yes, sir. Probably the only one in the state.
I don't remember any local DeVasilia.
No, sir.
Good to have one.
I appreciate it. Thank you. First, good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Mr. Matthews, I'm in your district. I'm here to talk about what they probably don't want to hear about is flooding. I have 6 acres down on the corner of Callista where the Callista pump station is. The creek consistently floods, takes out my neighbor's driveway and my driveway. I know that there's a lot going on right now with the building and your stop work process, but I just wanted to bring it to y'all's attention. And if you want to come out, I'm more than welcome at any time, 473 Callista. Please come out and I can show you. It floods. I have a 2-acre parcel that my house sits on. I bought the 4 acres where that big tobacco barn is. That acreage over there is unusable at this time of year because the creek floods and consistently is wet because of the flooding.
Is this the first time you've reported it? Have you reported it to anyone previously?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I talked to Mike Hussein, and I can't remember the gentleman's name who's in charge of the sanitation district. Jeremy, I think, don't quote me on that. But anyhow, we have at the edge of my driveway, there is a manhole for the sewer system, and it's under about 5 inches of water right now. I called him here about 3 days ago, and they had issues with it. So I'm constantly calling them and letting them know what's going on. It's costing y'all money because of the work that they're having to do because of the flooding. And I know on Village's court, they just put those 2 new box culverts in, which was great, but that just lets the water run faster to get into my place. And my neighbor at 471, where the 2 creeks connect, is, and I kid you not when I tell you the creek is this wide. Well, we have 6 foot by 6 foot box culverts. Well, the water just can't get through the box culverts. It raises up, goes over his driveway, takes his gravel, goes over my drive on both sides of the creek, and takes out both of our driveways consistently. But that's all I had to say. I appreciate you folks for what you do as a past elected official for 8 years. I understand your position, so thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we got Philip Kelly.
Thank you all for having me tonight.
Yes, sir.
Believe it or not, you look at my white head. I've been coming up here since I got out of high school. People trying to tell me what we need to do with our farm.
Mm-hmm.
And our farm has been our family 130 years. It's a century farm. I won't pass it on to my children and to my grandchildren. There's been much, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read this so I won't mess up, and I may still mess up. There's been much talk about a road across our farm. We received a letter from an engineering company that would be coming onto our property. I called him and told him that it was not for sale. No nobody had approached us to buy it or for anything. And that they were not welcome to come surveying and tromping over my farm. They showed up anyhow, unannounced. The community that I grew up in, we had respect for our neighbors and their property and their investments. You didn't bother your neighbor's stuff. And I appreciate that same courtesy today. This will be, if y'all see to do this road, this will be the 4th time that the city has condemned property of ours for the convenience of somebody else. And there's more down the road if you get this, and I'm sure. So, you know, we just won't be there and be left alone. Our family's one of the oldest families in the city, I guess. It's our goal to preserve the land, produce food for future generations. If you're going to take the land from us, it should be as valuable as any land around that interstate, because we've got about all that's left, with the exception of a few lots. And, you know, we just don't want to sell it. To oblige the road from Pleasant Grove, to align the road from Pleasant Grove to Union Road, you're going to take 1/3 of a 30-acre tract of land. This land has been used to support our business, as well as the water supply and the spring that furnishes the water for our livestock, for this farm, another farm, and our neighbor's farms down the road. We paid taxes on this property for 45 years and have got no return for our tax today, not $1. I was told I could get it took out. I chose not to. Maybe that was a mistake. But we, you know, it's farmland. Farmland's got no place in paying city taxes. Y'all may have noticed it, but the governor of the state addressed set aside $25 million to budget to help establish the Farmland Preservation Fund, which seeks to provide landowners resources to preserve the family farms for generations to come. That's all we're trying to do. We could put our land in a farmland trust, and we have talked about it in detail and met with them. If we put it in the reason we didn't, when you sign that agreement, it says forever. Forever is a real long time. And if we sign this document and go into this agreement, I'll go to my grave knowing that there's a green spot down there along with every one of us, because nobody here will ever see it developed. I don't want to do that. I want to work with y'all. I want to farm my land. I won't be left alone. And that's all I'm asking. I appreciate your consideration. The road you're working on in front of my house is a living nightmare. I mean, we cannot, our feed trucks can't get in, our milk trucks can't get in, we can't get out with our equipment. It's far beyond anything I thought it would be when we agreed to let you do it. So, I'm just asking you, figure out you another red light. People talk about red light at Union Road. I guarantee you, there ain't nobody makes no more trips a day than I do out Union Road seeing my business. And I managed to get out so everybody else can. And I don't mean to be ugly, but the people that don't like the roads like they are, they all looked at them when they drove in here. I mean, if you don't like it, keep driving. I appreciate y'all's time, and I appreciate your consideration. We do not want our farm tore apart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. All right, nobody else has signed up for public comment, so new business, discuss land use regulations update. Just
walked in late. All right, so we came before you a few months ago and kind of introduced the UDOs, what we're going to call them, the Unified Development Ordinance. And we have gotten everything in order. We're moving forward. We presented several chapters, basically of some of the changes that will take place. And I joked with Mr. Murphy earlier. He asked, what did that look like in the old regs? And I held up a blank piece of paper. So, with that said, Kimberly Horn, they're out of the Sarasota office. They're planners. I know Kimberly Horn has had representatives from on the development side, and they're sort of like, the defense attorney. I consider them, not these guys, but whenever, somebody from Kimberly Horn standing here, they're representing that client. But these guys are true planners, and Jenny and I and staff have had a great working relationship. When they got the contract, we had, gone out to several different vendors, and nothing looked like White House, what they were proposing. There was a lot of things that just didn't fit. And what they were, proposing to do, which we wanted was just an update to combine the zoning ordinance, subregs, design standards, all in one document to really match what's in the municipal code, just so everything aligns. So that's what you have before you guys tonight, and I hope, we can answer any questions.
Great. Well, hi everyone. My name is Anna Willis, and I'm a land planner that has been working through this project since the beginning.
Michael Reynolds. I'm also land planner with Anna. We're on the same team, both working basically on this project.
So the way that CJIS and I and the whole team decided, we were kind of figuring we can take this kind of as a conversational approach, going through each document that you all have seen up to this point. And we've done a slideshow to kind of guide that conversation, listen to the input that you all might have, any questions, and we'll just go from there. So currently in the process, we are in the development of the code. We're pretty much wrapping up at this point. This is our first draft, including comments received back from staff. And at this point, we just have our administration section left. So we typically do that one last because we need to go back through everything that's been drafted and pull the definitions, get the approval processes and procedures in order, work with the city attorney with fees, and ensure everything is just cohesive. That's the last piece of the puzzle. The engineering sections are currently being reviewed by staff, the staff engineer, so we don't have any of those materials here. And we included the more, updated documents that aren't necessarily included in the current code, as well as just full updates on things that are already existing.
And I'll make a comment when she mentions the engineering document, those are the subregs. There are components, and I would have been prepared to talk about, the stormwater piece, when everything was happening last week, but we'll save that for when we meet again in March. But that document does have some strengthened language in the stormwater code, so we've been working. But I wanted to just mention that.
Okay.
There's some pieces in there that you'll be seeing in the next month or so.
I don't, you guys may already be working on it, but I'm not opposed to being more stringent than what the state requires. I think we really need to take a look at doing that and really beefing that up.
We'll prepare a document and show you what we're doing versus the state and other cities.
Okay.
And so like Anna mentioned a minute ago, this is kind of just a quick overshot of where we are currently. You can see Chapter A is the one that we just started, which is the administration section. And so we provided some documentation from both Chapter C and Chapter B, a couple of different like use standards, the parks and open space, parking and loading. So a couple of different aspects from each that we've provided to kind of give you a little oversight of certain chapters. And then like we were just talking a minute ago, Chapter D and E, the subdivision, environmental, engineering, that's in review. And so that just kind of gets a breakdown of the chapters and how it will be outlined, so streamlining all of the documents into one easy compiled document at the end of all of this. And so the use table and standards, just kind of a quick overview of this. We really took the original one from the old UDO and we tried to streamline it into a more condensed version without losing all of the uses. And so one of our main goals, and Jenna and all of us work together, is to maintain the uses that were already in there, but make sure they made sense in the use standard section. So what you see here is a picture of the use table, and so the light blue represents newly proposed, permitted, or special exception uses in certain districts. And then the snippet on the right is kind of a little screenshot of what the standards would be. So one of the examples that I pulled that I was looking at is looking at personal service. And so that specific use is kind of the larger umbrella in the use table. But when you're able to go, if you have the section reference, you're able to see it in the standards, it breaks down more specifically what's included in that. So it's not just this 15-page table that you have to scroll through, really look for certain things. It kind of makes it a little bit easier to say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. You go to the standards and there's a specification. So just a quick.
And I'll just chime in and say, right now, say somebody calls in and wants to know, how can I use my property? So under each zoning designation, it'll have permitted uses and special exception. It's not in table format. You have to read through the case. So.
Right.
I have a question. If we put this on our website, will it be interactive? So if you clicked on the standard, it would take you to the section you needed to go to?
Yes, that is part of the final deliverable, to my knowledge. I can go back and double check, but I believe that is something that we said.
Just want it to be like
a hyperlink.
Right.
Yeah.
User friendly is the main goal with this.
And you can see right there the column that says section reference. That's at the very end of the document. When we're all finished, we go back and cross-reference every section to make sure all the numbers and sections match. And so that's where it could be that direct link to that specific standard section.
Yeah. Want it to be like interactive
Yeah.
as possible.
Right, yeah.
So that
And
people
ease
aren't like
review.
hunting and pecking and trying to figure out.
And that's kind of what our number one goal with this, and especially taking that approach with the use table.
Are there any comments or questions on this as a whole from what you've seen up to this point with the use table and standards that we provided?
And I guess one more quick note as well, in the handout that we provided, those zoning districts on the use table are the condensed ones in that table that we provided as well, so that has been updated.
One question I had was, if we could keep the suggested zoning districts that you proposed, in medium density, we're now going to allow single-family attached houses for this table. And that is different than what we have now. None of our R20, R15 allow single-family attached houses. And I looked at several other cities, and most of those other cities also do not allow it.
So yeah, it's about special exception.
Special exceptions, yeah,
Yeah.
it needs to be updated there.
Yeah. So yeah, the light blue is what we're workshopping through to add to this. So that's not finalized. That's why we've kept it in light blue. So
That is something that we
that's
can
something that we're going back and
definitely
forth and adjusting. Yeah.
And I see frequently asked questions, this caption that we provided also shows the zoning district transitions that we're proposing too, where we have the current existing list on the left and then on the right how we've consolidated them all. So if there are any questions with that too, that would probably be a valid point to discuss at this point.
Yeah, so I did have some issue with that. My ward is primarily R20, and there is some open land in the ward and throughout the city. And to put those two together and not allow discretion with our planning commission and our board of mayor and aldermen, I think our citizens would have some issue with that. They're leaning more towards less dense than more dense. And if we combine R20 and R15, we're giving 5,000 square feet.
I think they would be more or less grandfathered in, especially if you think like Palmer, Chapel, some of those edge fringe areas that were farmland. they would more or less be grandfathered in, even though their zoning designations are 20. I mean, they have, what, 5 acres and so, I think, there may be some consideration.
And then, if they do
Okay.
not a PUD, but just a development where, of course, they can consolidate then and leave some open spaces, and then you get even smaller lots. And I think that's not what our citizens want. I think we want discretion. So I looked at several other cities, and I've watched several other cities go through this process, and I think we want more discretion with our zoning. I don't think we want to combine it too much to where we leave it open to the developer. If you get rid of if you combine R20 and R15, you can almost guarantee that no developer is going to build on 20,000 square foot lots. It's going to be all 15,000. And that's what I've seen in other cities. I've seen other cities combine districts, and they have to go back and change it because the developers come in and they use the space to profit the most. So.
And that kind of ties into the cluster subdivisions too. So we have proposed a mix of housing types and lot sizes, minimum lot widths, with bringing this idea into play, ensuring that the agricultural land is preserved more through this method. These are two examples of conventional versus a cluster with density incentives. You'll see the lot sizes are larger with the conventional, and with the cluster with density incentives, it's allowing for more open space requirements. So this would be an option for new residential development.
So what zoning would they go into? So if we have a cluster, could they just decide, say if they want to go into what you currently have as R20 and R15, how would we go through that approval process? Would we need to rezone the land for a cluster development, or if the land was already R20 and they got, so I assume they have to go through some type of approval process.
Yeah, so it's within specific residential districts that we're proposing, and they shall be a minimum of 5 acres total. I believe we put them, I should have pulled that.
When you say open space, you mean more green space?
Yes, green space, parks and open space, utilizing trails, active, passive.
So small lots, a little open space.
You have higher density for the townhouses.
For the cluster with the density incentives, that would be an option. Yeah.
And one thing to point out is that when Paula Melton was on the planning commission, one of the things before she left, she wanted to identify active uses for open space, because most of the neighborhoods we have now don't have true uses for open space. They throw a swing set up. So that was one of the things we wanted to get through in this document. They have used some strategic, they placed some options in there to allow that open space not to just be, storm detention pond or just usable. So
We want, like usable open space.
So the lots are not specified to like single family dwelling, it could be a stacked townhouse.
No, it would be single family development. Yeah, it wouldn't be townhomes and cluster subdivisions. This is allowing for larger lots, single family mainly, only.
In your clusters now, looking at the procedure or the SOP that you guys provided, I saw townhouses. I also saw vinyl as a material for the exterior.
Yeah, we kept the townhouses in there as a discussion point because we did not include lot size or the minimum width. So this is something that could easily be removed. It varies obviously from municipality to municipality how they want to go about the clusters and what type of houses are permitted in those. So I think that feedback is valid too.
And also, we can say by, the state law they passed a couple of years ago, we had to take the word prohibit out when it becomes a material. So we can, what I say is what our preferred materials are. So just FYI on that.
So we can tell them something's prohibited?
No, we can't. There was a law that was passed a couple of years ago on design standards. Like we can say for preferred materials, which,
and that's very common with a lot of state statutes that we're seeing. Design standards are becoming difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like developers have the control.
They do.
They do. Legislation.
Yeah, legislative.
If if the discussion was down there that the community and the people who are here are not big, the larger the lot, the better. Can we, as a group or as a city, say there is no R-15? Is that a thing that has to be?
No, that is definitely something that we can discuss as a whole. I mean, if we want to remove R-15, it's not no, we can't do that.
So R-20 could be the smallest lot.
Right, R-20 could be, but logistically, I mean, just what are you?
I would caution against that. I mean, you have to have a variety of, my recommendation was to maintain a variety of some lot sizes. I mean, it's just for a healthy community.
I mean, you could go down to R-10 or
No,
5 or...
I would get rid of R-10 before R-15. You can put a mobile home on R-10, not to discriminate against a mobile home, but, or if you had a 5 acre R-10 tract, you can do a mobile home park, technically, with that. So, I think it's healthy to have a variety of lots. We don't have many vacant lots. We got a few, like, as you were saying, in your ward, and then around North Palmer's, you got a few large lots. But I think we could put controls in place based on what we have.
Can we change our zoning to some of these areas to where we have it to the higher, like the R-20, and then they have to come to us for approval for something?
You want to change the property owner's zoning, you mean?
I want to change it all.
No.
Sorry.
No.
Come on, Caesar.
I say yes.
I think the biggest thing is having discretion where it has to go through the approval process.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the key.
And I just don't like grandfathering people in and say lumping all these together, and if you're an R-20, well, now you have R-15 approval, basically.
Right.
So, and you could even take that down to 10. I think combining those and being able to allow discretion. If they never get approval, they're never used, so.
And just FYI, they have the marching orders of this board, and so they're keenly aware of, where we are as a city with development and some of the things that, as a board, planning commission, you guys want to do. So
Yeah.
FYI.
Ultimately, we're creating this for y'all in the community. Like, we want this document to be useful and beneficial to the community itself. We know what works for White House won't work for the next door neighbor. So that's the whole approach with this. It's just ensuring that we're not the ones making the decisions. We want this to be the collaborative approach that we're doing, and ensuring that everything that we're drafting and showing and putting in front of all of y'all is going to make sense for White House. So the conversation's very beneficial for us.
So I think we're all some of us I know are agreed that less density is better, less traffic is better.
Right.
So the high density clusters on smaller pieces of land is not preferred.
Okay.
Am I correct in saying that?
For me.
And if you don't have the flexibility to have R-15, then if R-20 is the smallest lot, then it doesn't have to be discussed every time it comes up.
I would say if you have the ability to deny it as a board, then, let's say 20 years from now, I think I'm looking at this document as a whole 30 years down the road. So that's just how I'm looking.
I would like to say I agree with Ceges. I think that we are not, these are not, again, it's going to have to go before you to approve it.
Yep.
And so if the timing and the attitude of the community is, okay, we don't want this now, we don't want any more high density, then you don't have to approve it. But we just still need the option out there in case, something terrible happens and nobody in this town can afford anything, and we want our kids to live here, and, there's no housing options for them. And so, at some point we may be of the mind where we do want, that to be an option. So I think the more options you have available, the better off you are, but it's not something that you are forced to approve.
As long as we've got control over approving it or not.
I think
it's
even
not a
if
big deal.
I know if we made it a special exception, for example, where you did it case by case, where, it makes sense where someone comes with the idea for a cluster subdivision.
I would rather go through the
Just
boards,
the
both
process, having
boards,
a board
instead of just
process.
with a special exception, it only has to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals,
Right.
where rezoning has to go through the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor.
Yeah.
Alderman, which I think that's the way it should stay. I would hate to use a lot of special exemptions, because.
PCA is not meant for that.
Yeah.
A special exception shouldn't be the norm.
That's right.
No, it's not, yeah.
If it is, then it needs to be incorporated into the zoning.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we'll work to create something with the clusters that makes sense to start with the idea of it, rather than going full force in with something new. And then I think next we have the nonconformities. This is an existing section in the code. The approach with this was just making it a little easier to digest and read. You can go and figure out what a nonconforming use is, structure, lots, development features, have everything in one spot, and just go from there.
Can you just go back and explain how the neighborhood center PUDs and the commercial PUDs, they were both combined into a planned development commercial, is that correct? So the higher density PUDs that we have.
SRPUD and NCPRD. We're working through that. What you have, we had a conversation about some changes to that because it was some semantics that are in your package. So we're working through that, and they'll be able to flush that out.
And then going back to that, it looks like you kept the SRPUD to a PDR, which is a planned development residential. And one of the things that I've looked at over the years is when developers come here and they want to use our simplified process to build a community, we did not have a zoning at a less dense for their residential development. I know they have the option to build at our 20,000 square foot lot, but we did not have an option initially designed for like R20 PUD. And that might be easier for the developer if they have a PUD available to utilize.
The trick or the thing with the PUD is they'll bring a pretty picture when they come, then they'll come back and want to change it. And I got a lot of developer friends, but I think the key with the PUD, and Jerry and I talked about this a lot, is not necessarily restricting it by like the density. We can really control what that PUD looks like on the front end. Like I think there was a development like that came before you on that 85 acres. I mean that's probably one of the prettiest designs I've ever seen. First Ridge is a nice design. Those are the two best ones that I've seen since I've been here. So we really control that in the design stage because it's a planned unit development and we have more say so over it than just a straight neighborhood. But what we end up getting at the end result, for whatever, it has been just neighborhood. But we have better control over that, even without putting restrictions, by lot width on the PUD. If that makes sense.
Well, right now with an SRPUD, they're allowed to go down to a more dense lot than R20, correct?
Yes.
And
3 units an acre.
Yeah. So kind of what I'm proposing is maybe looking at allowing developers to use that same process, but designate another category with our PUDs at a lower density, where when they come into our community, they have an easier process to use at a less dense rate, and to make it easier for them. Because a lot of times when these PUDs come through, they're at the densities that we've seen for the last several years, which again our citizens are not in favor of that. And I just want, at some point we're going to have additional development and want to have a process where we can attract those high-quality homes with those larger lots and make it easy for the developer. That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Well, and CJS and I, after our conversation, spoke about the zoning district specifically for this PUD. So we went back and we looked at the commercial, planned development, residential, and then adding just planned development. So going through your suggestions and looking at those standards and how we can adapt them to be specific to what you're saying. So we're going to apply that now that we have those three. It's just that we've not printed in this. It was after.
Because the NC, and it's even confusing to me just talking through it daily, but NC, PUD, now we have a commercial PUD, we only have one commercial PUD. So, when I saw that, you see that NC, and I think in their assumption too, that NC was that one commercial PUD at Raymond Hirsch 31. But, that's, then NCRPUD are those higher density, planned unit development. So we still have to flush out that distinction and create like the process.
Yeah, so we'll work through that, and we have some stuff to
Another thing, think about also, and I wish we had a slide for it with the comprehensive plan, which is coming up on time for that to improve upon or change, because if you think about some of the commercial districts and the way things are laid out now, and I'm just hypothetically talking, like going north on 31W right now, it's showing medium, low to medium density, but that could possibly be, after we do a study, that could turn into a commercial corridor, you know, the further north you go, possibly. So, but the comprehensive plan is also kind of another tool that will, you know, this zoning ordinance will conform to as well, with controls on low density, medium, you know, where the density we want to see it going.
Any issues or any comments from nonconformities? No?
Okay, so parking and loading. So we took this section, I know this is a heavy section, and so we really wanted to kind of bring together everything that was currently in the code, but also update it to be streamlined as well, keeping that same approach. And so there's a lot more, there'll be a lot more graphics in this. As you can see, this is one of the examples that we've used. A lot more tables, really kind of defining specific standards set for the areas that, the zoning districts, the areas that off-street parking, loading, anything that needs to be addressed in certain zoning districts needs to be, it's set up to where it's easily readable in these tables for uses, so you can see residential, the minimum requirement, any additional standards that comes with it. So it's just right there, one-stop shop for specifically for residential and going into commercial and any of the other uses. So I know this is it's a hefty document, so if there's any questions on this, I felt like we could just briefly talk and then open it up for any questions on this as well.
My biggest issue with parking is that there's just not enough, and looking at some of the new townhome areas that are being developed, there's no extra parking. So if there's more than 2 drivers in a home, whether it's a attached or unattached home or a townhome, there's street parking. Everyone's parking on the street or they're parking in their yard. And the roads are also not wide enough for some of this safely, especially in new subdivisions. And like I'm looking at this diagram right here as an example, and you have 2.5 spots for a single dwelling attached, right? But then for a 2-family multiplex, you only have 2 spots. Like, why wouldn't they get, you know, and how do you do a half spot? You know, it's either 2 or it's 3, you know? And there are a lot of teenage drivers in this community, and they are driving. And they're parking wherever. And a lot of them we have more people moving into the townhomes that are being built. And so looking forward, I don't know that this actually allows for as much parking as people might want or need.
I looked at some other ordinances from other cities on this, and what some of them were doing was for so many units, they were adding a guest parking spot.
Yes.
So that's kind of how they were addressing that. So.
Yeah, guest parking, and I think that gets into a little, it gets a little more into the engineering standards of stuff at times too when it comes to guest parking, I know, but it's something that we definitely can. I mean, did we mark?
I think they were just adding it to the total. It wasn't a designated area for gas. They would say for every 5 or 8 units, I can't remember exactly what the numbers were, they'd do a +1 required. And that way, for every so many units, there's extra parking spots. So.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
That is a good question. You sent me several questions on parking, and I'll tell you that is a challenge every time we get, you know, even just with the building inspection side of things, is parking. You know, little things like, you know, the island. Like if you go to like a Publix, you'll see that in there currently you notice those islands like every 12 spots, then you have to have an island. There's so much minutia in these parking regs that it's those great questions.
Perhaps less buildings would be the answer.
And I've also seen ratios for certain codes that have specifically talking about bicycle parking for certain lots. It's the same thing like you were saying. Like after 15 vehicle spots, there needs to be a 1 bicycle spot, and having a ratio set for that, so we can look at
Because riding a bicycle here is so easy.
The hotel motel.
You can barely drive a car.
The hotel motel, I expect that's probably incorrect, 0.05 per room. And I don't think that's accurate, but I just wanted to note it. 0.05 spaces per room.
On the multifamily?
On the hotel motel.
Oh, it is, you're right, I thought it was 0.5 when I looked at it, but you're right, it does say 0.5.
Yeah, definitely a typo.
Yeah.
Well, in the
Thank you.
multifamily here.
It's the same on the multifamily too.
Multifamily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually highlighted
Yeah,
that.
that's the point.
Yeah, yeah, I think it. Okay, another question I had about parking was, so in mixed locations like the city centers, are we following commercial parking guidelines or residential parking?
City center, commercial,
It's commercial,
yeah.
One of the things with the design that I was looking at, it would be mainly for large retail, big box stores, things of that nature, and maybe even some of the smaller shopping centers, is the width between the aisles. You know, I was in a parking lot last week that was very poorly designed, and it just clicked in my mind that, you know, we don't want something like that. And it wasn't in the city of White House, but I think with a lot of our community drive larger trucks, and so giving them enough room to back out properly without hitting the cars in the other aisle, I think ours are set at 20 in this reg that you guys provided, and I looked at some other cities and they had extended it. I think it was actually different for 1 lane and 2 lanes in the reg you provided, and some of them were going up to about 25 feet between aisles.
We could do the same thing about the road width in all the new developments.
Right.
Yeah,
Which
we're
on,
thinking
the
about-
engineering standards, we'll have to that's another engineering thing we'll need to look through.
Yeah, like-
That needs to be really looked at,
Yeah.
because honestly, I live in a subdivision where two can park in a driveway, maybe 4. The streets aren't big enough. People are crowding to get around cars. Emergency vehicles can't get through. I think that's a problem in most of the developments that have been approved previous to this administration. But that standard needs to be looked at.
Yeah, that's one of the things, like, when we talk about lowering speed, and it goes into, like, the way that our ordinance, our current ordinance has, you know, certain widths, and it's tailored to design speed, and that's a little bit even more technical for me to really comprehend, but that's what I think we can address.
I don't care what the speed limit is, if it's not wide enough, you can't go that anyways.
Right.
I mean.
That's why I always recommended, and we haven't done it yet, is parking only on one side of the street, only having signs that indicate that. That opens the road up a little bit more, because instead of people parking on both sides, trying to see the fire truck through there, you know.
Right.
So, but we haven't, not enforced that place in the code, but I think that's something I would.
It has to be looked at, because if fire and police can't get down there and ambulances, we have a problem.
Yeah, and it's because of people parking on each side, and they are.
Right.
In any direction they want, and now the flow of traffic, which it requires by law, but.
But we definitely need to look at that, because if we're only gonna park on one side of the street, I'm gonna feel bad for the people that have the other side of the street where they're not gonna have enough parking because they've got 2 teenage drivers and 2 adult drivers. No one drives 1 car anymore.
No, that's why we tried to make this I was looking at driveway length is 20 feet in this code. We currently been requiring 36 feet.
Right.
Did
you tell me that Doris Farms, that they're not allowing street parking in Doris Farms? Did you tell me that?
HOA.
It's not gonna allow?
Did I tell you that?
Yes, I thought you did.
I got a phone call from a resident that was asking about HOA, you know, what was stricter, HOA or city, you know, we allow off-street parking.
Right.
Okay.
But HOA, I think Doris Farms, yeah.
I've driven down, the extension of Cedar Brook, and their houses are already occupied there, and I've seen, you know, the driveways are full, the cars are parked, and so you're kind of doing this. And all I could think about a fire truck. They're not gonna make it.
Yeah, the HOA, they, are.
But you know.
Yeah, they're
People don't listen
strict.
to police.
So that's the current problem, but looking
Yeah,
forward.
that's right.
Well, if we could widen the roads, that would
Right.
help as well, especially the entrance and, you know, trying to get in and out of some of these places. It's just too narrow for a car to come
You
in while
said
another
that-
car's leaving.
You said that's engineering standards, so
So-
that'll be in the
Which
next
will
draft
be in the
that we
next,
look at.
yeah,
Okay.
a lot of those technical roadways, sidewalks, improvements, that's all gonna be included in the subdivision and engineering standards section.
Look for bicycle parking. I'm looking at the table 4211A, and it's great to include. I don't think ours is included right now, but I think for an educational facility, one space per 10 students. I think that would probably be too much. We don't have a lot of students that ride their bicycles to our schools.
They're driving.
Yeah.
Well, and we don't have the ability for kids to ride a bicycle to school. Our
No.
roads don't allow for that.
We don't
Our
have
infrastructure
sidewalks.
doesn't allow for that.
Yeah.
We do have bicycle lanes, but
All right. Any other graphics?
Regarding parking, I did have a question, and I'm not sure if you answered this. Guidelines for General Assembly or educational services, I didn't see those listed.
Yeah, we talked about that one, about the building. So general assembly is more of a building code designation, and so
by the building?
it's by
Okay.
whatever the use is. So
Okay.
if it's a, a gas stuff, yeah, if it's a grocery
Okay.
store, then it'll be a development,
Understood.
Enforcement, I know that Steve just has sent a couple things our way that have been some hot topics. I know, parking on unapproved surfaces is a big one. It is currently being worked on, so it'll be another thing that will be sent y'all's way. I know that there's a couple ways to go about enforcing, parking on unapproved surfaces. So we just want to let you know that that's top of our list, and we're working through that now. And then, the landscape and buffer section, we updated graphics as well as tables for this section to ensure the buffers work. If someone needs to buffer type A, B, C, or D, they can go quickly to the section, find the requirements, and go from there.
And then just one note on that, our landscape architect has been notified on some edits for this section regarding native plant species and certain types for buffering and landscaping. So that is being added and worked on. So I just wanted to preface that by saying you might not have seen it in this document, but he's working on that currently.
I do have a question, and I didn't send this to you, Steve, but if there was a desire to have a community garden, does that fall under outdoor recreational use, or would that fall under agriculture, or does it fall under park? How does that get?
Park,
It's under
typically.
park?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Did not know that.
Yep.
And that might even be something we can discuss too, where with the requirements with parks and open space for new subdivisions, having that as an option for developers to allow usable gardens and community gardens, because I know that that's a big hit in a lot of municipalities.
For sure.
Yeah.
But does require some plumbing though, I mean.
Yeah, irrigation for sure. So it potentially could just be like a incentive for a developer to use it,
As part of the green space.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Parks and open space. As we've kind of touched on throughout the last couple minutes, we put in a bunch of different examples of what parks and open space could be, from pocket parks to greens to a garden. Using linear parkways to create connectivity from other neighborhoods to one another. And we've just laid it out with graphics, updated tables, and also we would love to hear feedback regarding the sizes of the neighborhoods. We right now have just less than 50 acres and then greater than 50 acre properties, but as we've been discussing,
As well as less than 10 acres.
And less than 10.
Residential.
but we've been discussing anywhere between like having if there's a 5 to 10 acre subdivision that's created, what that would look like for active and passive open space, and kind of breaking it up more than just having these like differences, because less than 50 acres and greater than 50 acres are such big difference. I mean, it's such a huge difference.
Right, and
So-
if you look at the residential, it's saying that less than 50 acres, one small open space type, one medium open space type. So we're finding that when you get down to those smaller sizes for 10 acres and what's between 10 and 50. So just kind of looking at more of a breakdown than just kind of having an overarching.
Which,
For,
this says 10 to 30, so it's 60 instead of 30.
For discussion purposes, a good example would be Marlin Road. That subdivision is so they did a cluster development, and it's R15, but they, so 15,000 square foot minimum. They may have done 8,000 square foot and put the 7,000 in like residual for open space, but you don't really see any usable open space, and so I think this would be, practical for that. We'll put better control to at least get the neighborhood to just not be just a street full of houses, right? And some open space that we will look at in that development.
And will we have standards in place for like neighborhood parks and things
Yes.
like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, and also to, I guess, to go back to, the point regarding the 10 to 30. So we have, essentially what we provided you were 2 different drafts.
Okay.
So the first part up into where it says questions for staff, is one proposed draft of the open space section, and then underneath that is another way that we can go about it, which breaks it down more by the 10 to 30 acres, for example, and having it 10%. And then there's the open space design standards throughout here, and the table 4.6.4.1 is active features versus passive features. So, and we're going to clean up the numbers. This is just a good final draft for everyone.
And this is where one of the community gardens
Could go, right, yeah. And then as far as what you were asking about parks, it would be listed here. And then so it would give the developer the option to choose what they want. So if you want to ensure that a certain park or something is being included in these neighborhoods, that's where we could get a little more, I guess, less lenient, more regulated if we wanted to, but we have a list for both types included in here.
So if I understand this correctly, let's just go off that you have a 30-acre space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 10% of that has to be left for green space, which would be 3 acres.
Mm-hmm.
But of that 3 acres, up to 50% could be stormwater,
Yes,
correct?
it could be essentially used as,
So that would be an acre and a half to stormwater management.
If it is needed for that lot, yes.
Okay.
So it's all, and I just had this conversation, we're doing another code update in North Carolina, and a similar question was brought up where it ultimately comes down to the usability of the land and the design of the land. Design is the biggest thing where it comes, you say, okay, yeah, 10% of this property is going to be designated to open space, but if 50% or even greater than that has to be for stormwater, then what? So that's where we need to figure out the best method of creating the flexibility, but also regulating like how the open space can be used productively and usably.
And we've seen one instance in Sarasota County where they have a certain open space requirement where they like 50% natural vegetation.
Yeah.
So they prefer the pine flatwoods to be preserved over allocating more of that for stormwater. So there's just different ways to
So
approach
the developer would have to use a piece of their pie.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just, it goes both ways depending on, site specific and
Right.
or what you would like to see.
Yeah, that needs to be looked at.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes back to the native tree list that will be added to that.
Good.
I
One thing with going back to landscaping, we didn't go over the buffers, the tables that was in place. Just looking through it, a lot of the buffers for medium density residential R20 to some of the other look about the same as we have now. Actually, a little bit more increase with the new landscaping design that you proposed. But when I look at the planned development units that you guys have and the industrial, I had some questions about some of those. So we have A screening required for some of the industrial to commercial, and also to say a planned unit development that's primarily residential, you have A screening for both industrial, light and heavy. That to me would need to be looked at, I would think. And also the PDR to say ag, to only have like an A screening for that. Some of those three categories I think we might want to take a look at.
Yeah, we'll get with our landscape architect to discuss that a little further. We'll make
Like
note of
that
that.
bigger, like, yeah.
Just, you want a greater buffer in between.
I would
Yeah,
think
think it
because
makes
you're
sense.
going from a heavy industrial to a planned unit development,
For
which is
sure.
residential.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally agree.
If I may,
Yeah.
I think this is very timely because some of this came up with the development on 31 and Raymond Hirsch. And I noticed that there's a tree save area requirement within here, and it's at 10% is set aside for trees, and that development has a lot of trees there. Is that something we should, look back into and how to save some of these trees to address some of these
I think this
stormwater issues we're having?
Yeah, I think this kind of gets into
Yeah.
this gets into it a lot better than kind of what we have.
Well, the other part of that was there's a natural creek through there, so they can only develop to a certain point towards the creek. So part of that should be kept
Along the creek.
undeveloped,
Yeah.
which I'm wondering, because I wasn't on the panel when we did the Doris Farm. That creek bed looks like it was completely stripped. Like, just driving by, there was a front creek and then there was a side creek, and I don't know that the front creek has any vegetation that was originally there.
Yeah.
No, it's gone.
Gone.
Yeah, and that should have never been messed with. Just saying.
There was
Anyway.
anyone sick?
I do have another question regarding buffers, since we were talking about buffer zones. So, if a farm greenhouse nursery is a property and a residential development comes in, I think you may have answered this, then the residential developer is responsible for the buffer zone,
Right.
correct?
Yep.
Just making sure.
Yep.
I don't know that it actually says that.
And we're keeping our buffering in place for the greenway, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, yes.
It
I
typically
actually
just
think we
implies
should
the
look
residential
at,
developer
okay,
should,
yeah,
I mean,
more of
buffers
a-
are a part
Yes,
of
50 feet.
the new
It's only
development.
50 feet
Okay.
now.
That's a requirement in
Okay.
site plan
Thank you.
list.
I think it should be more than 50 feet, so we
I
can,
do too.
yeah. I mean, Doris Farm took up a lot of the greenway. Like, the beautiful terrain that we had there is gone, and there's only a 50-foot buffer, and it
50
really
feet
needs to
is
be more.
very, it
It's
was.
You can see
small.
through it.
You could, yeah,
Yeah.
You mean north?
north,
North,
Yeah,
north,
North Palmer.
yeah, North Palmer's, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, the reserve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I think it's rating from property line.
Yeah, it needs to be, right now it's only a 50 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it needs to be more than that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on that board, so that's
Yeah.
important to me.
No, it's important. Like I said, the more information and feedback we can get.
We got a park director here as well, so I keep
Yeah.
looking at him. But he wants to, we wanna link the greenway, I was just thinking, we
Yeah.
wanna link it eventually.
Yeah, so it needs to be, I mean,
Yeah.
to me, we need to preserve that.
Anything else on buffers? Talk about first notice phase, and then this is a new topic that we've been discussing with CGIS, a gas station overlay district, in the major thoroughfares, where I know that CGIS, this is CGIS.
I told y'all, everything y'all say, I've had a good group of people to bounce the sounding board off, but, with Speedway and the drama we've had in Love, limiting them, or like you were saying, special exception is probably not the right idea, which I was thinking about doing, but at least, limiting the pumps and, being able to say, being able to know whether it's gonna be a fuel center, I think this gets at that intent of limiting that type of use.
It did make me think about the Casey's though, because there's a creek there. How close to a creek that has, wasn't it salamanders that are in there? Can a gas station?
I'll leave that to TDEC, but I
That's
think
TDEC, yeah.
Yeah, TDEC would, they
Okay.
have to get all those approvals.
Yeah, they have to have environmental,
And just to, sorry to kind of segue, sidebar, just to, a lot of times when I bring plans and I'll say TDOT has the final say of the driveway, we just went through an issue with, that PUD where, we approved the entrances, but TDOT required a greater, they wanted a greater distance, and so they told the developer, if you want the full access, you'll have to, they didn't force them to buy the, neighboring property, but,
Right.
so that's just an instance with like TDEC as well. So the state's looking at
Okay.
these plans, after we approve them in planning commission, including the gas pumps and salvage.
Right.
Did you include that language for the gas station
No,
overlay?
we did not give
Okay.
that to y'all yet. That's being finalized. We're still discussing through with CJIS, so that'll be attached.
And see, just one of the things you may want to look at is the city of Memphis, their ordinance on how they laid it out. They talk about maybe.
I actually read through Memphis, and it was funny because the more research I was doing on it, it's more up north. So I was finding things in New York and Pennsylvania that had these gas station overlays implemented. So I kind of pulled and crafted from Memphis, obviously because it's so close, as well as the New York, it was in Pennsylvania, the town of York. And focusing on the major commercial thoroughfares they were pretty hand in hand with what they were proposing with these overlays.
And then I think Memphis, if I'm not mistaken, they did require, they pulled it out of a lot of their commercial zones and then put it, I think they have 3 or 4 different types of commercial zoning and specified it in one area.
Yeah.
And I don't believe it was environmental related. It was.
They had to be permitted. They had pumps per permit per pump or something like that. So I was just trying to think.
And I know it's like, our conversation has been just this area, specifically shown in this map, the west side, and it's a work in progress, but it's definitely, it's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can certainly do any corridor that, we think might, 31, both north and south of 31 W. If they want to do, all the main corridors.
Yeah.
And there was something in, that you guys did include, I saw where there's a limit on the number of gas stations per type of zoning, is that correct? Is that something that, because I think some of them would already be maxed out, what's currently proposed.
Right, yeah, that's why it's proposed language right now, we're working through it fully, getting all the kinks out, and just wanting to hear this type of feedback is good. Yeah, this is just for this conversation. Yeah.
Valerie, you got thoughts on the gas station?
Chance in my office is working on that,
Okay.
so I'm not as, but I'll definitely look at it once they get more language, and we'll make sure.
I just, part of me wonders, is car washes next and oil change places, and I mean, it seems like to me we're singling out one particular user, and I mean, I don't want gas stations everywhere either, but.
I think too, this also helps prevent the Buc-ee's from coming in or something like that.
Oh, yeah, definitely don't want that.
The other thing we're doing.
I love Buc-ee's, but don't want them here.
Where'd they go?
Becky's liquor stores are the only ones that are doing that too now that I can think of.
Yeah, and I know we did some restrictions on the vape shops, but that's more of sorry to anybody that vapes, but it's more of a nuisance thing as far as I'm concerned.
And that's a very common trend. I wrote so many ordinances for vape shops.
Hey, y'all be happy to know Hendersonville is actually calling us to know what our vape ordinance is. I was kind of excited about that.
Shout out to the new adults.
Yeah, Memphis was really drafted for a nuisance standpoint, because the gas stations were attracting crime.
Well, Memphis is a little bit of a different animal. But no, good point.
But that is all that we have prepared for today. There's a lot of good stuff coming. All this stuff that we've discussed today is very beneficial for us to go back and talk further with Regis and Jenna through everything. If there's any other questions or comments.
Help me out with this gas stations overlays. You're going to determine which intersections.
Corridor, whether it, maybe all the major corridors, to where, Loves could come, like we were saying,
like anywhere up and down 31 W.
If
there's an intersection or a road that comes out to there.
And what this would do would just limit that large fuel center. It's not like we're saying like a
like a little convenience market.
And I don't think a gas station will line up every other parcel. No. But it would just kind of help with.
Just create more standards.
I do have one more question. Regarding HOAs. I'm looking at the language on pages 4.6 is the section I'm in, language is on pages 2 and 13. And this is all about the open space. Okay, so an HOA is a community, residents pay HOA funds, and the way this is worded, it would seem that they own their swimming pool, clubhouse,
Right.
playground,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So, is that still counted in a subdivision as a pocket area if it's owned by the HOA?
Yeah, so essentially the developer develops it, the HOA takes ownership of it. So it's, yeah.
So the city still claims to be the green space within the,
No.
or not?
Yeah.
Say that, okay.
They just
It's
take
just-
over that
it's
space
a
and make it part of the
requirement.
amenity.
It's a requirement, that it's
Yes.
an amenity that they're
Yes,
required to
That they're
do.
required to.
So it's like.
But it would already be done before the HOA takes over, so it'd be like, it'd be approved, develop everything, then
Okay.
it's already existing, HOA takes over, it's now HOA's responsibility rather than the city's responsibility.
Okay, because the wording that it said, well, I know, I don't remember where I put it. Maybe it's on this page. A gathering space for residents, okay? So not everyone can just walk in and use it. So like the subdivision I live in, there's actually a gate that comes in, you have to have a key to get in, okay? You could walk up there, but you can't drive up there, you know? That's why I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so it's an open space for the residents. The public parks are different. This is just ensuring that open space is going to be preserved with new development that comes. So the people that live in these new developments will have open space to go to. They have friends over, they'll have people to come and hang out in. So it's not city maintained.
I mean, it's not like the Greenway.
No. But if there's a Greenway connection through there, that's another thing, where that could be counted towards their open space, or if they wanted to add on to, yeah.
But the HOA can definitely control who uses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Their
right.
property, yeah.
Yep.
And so, you know, when you're doing a subdivision, we want them to have an HOA, and we want them to provide amenities for those people who live in there, but we do not want to have to deal with them. The city does not want to have to deal with those. And those are for the people who are paying for them, and they're not for just all of us to go use.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
I would, on process, what is our next step for you all?
So, as we mentioned prior, the engineering standards are being reviewed by the city engineer. Once we receive comments from that, that will be the next deliverable for review, right, for everyone else to review. After that, it'll be board approval, or did we
Do we need
decided?
another study session?
I thought if when we get to the final package,
We were gonna
a full
split it
draft,
up.
we would like to do that.
We need another study session.
I just didn't know how far out that would be.
In March.
Yeah.
Yeah, the engineering in
Yeah.
March.
So
yeah.
are you gonna have the full draft?
Oh, it's probably by March, I mean, yeah, we would have everything
All right,
together.
so there, just put on the February agenda for Mayor Alderman to approve, reject the study session for this purpose for March.
Yeah.
Because I know that the board has asked us to bring, that you approve any study session that we're gonna have.
And then as far as approval goes, I know that we had discussed, so we're not giving the full document at once, we were gonna do separate approvals, just to give people time to digest and read this, because it'll be like
It's a lot.
of pages, a lot of things.
Well, we go through the planning commission, have to make the recommendation
Yeah,
for Mayor
to
Alderman
them.
for any zoning change, and for the changes that take place. So, I mean, we can do it in sections, it's just gonna be kind of drawn out.
Yeah, I think we wanted to do
We just need to
two.
know ahead of time.
Yeah, I know that
So
we
it's
were.
2 readings, it's,
Yeah.
so planning commission, say April, we have to have it approved by June.
Right.
So April, May, I guess April, May, June.
If you do planning commission in April, but if you're gonna be doing it in sections though, that'd be.
Yeah, I'd probably rather have the full document,
If we could.
when we bring it to board,
Okay.
rather than like
It would
A
be
and B.
I mean, yeah, it'll be done, it's just more so for like, everyone to be able to digest it and understand what they're reading, rather than giving like 600
I think if we do our
pages at
study
one
session
time.
in March, and we could get to the planning commission in April, then May, first reading for the board mayor, Alderman, second reading in June. Mine's right up with our budget.
The June deadline is because of the budget, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, yes, we're trying to get done.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, at this point, it's just our admin section, so.
And then if you
And
can get
that's
it,
just
we
so
always like
forward.
as much advanced notice as we can, so if we
For
have
sure.
this next section ready to go, get it to our board, if they have it for a couple of weeks, it's always great.
Mhm.
And then they can have their study session, and they'll be more prepared like they are today.
Yeah.
And they've had this material now for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
To be prepared
Yeah.
for that, that would be very helpful
For
to
sure.
us, too.
Yeah,
So.
and the easier the better with our community.
Yeah, that'll help us
Yeah,
out.
definitely. And we feel, I mean, pending, I mean, it really is just gonna depend on the engineering, how that comes back and how much edits will be needed to be made. So that's just, we won't know until we know with that.
And the admin section, you're working on that too.
Oh, yeah, actively, yeah.
So they may be able to see that.
Yeah.
We're getting that kind of finalized and formatted draft, like everything, streamlined for the right house, and see just our process go together and make sure everything all aligns with what was currently in there and what we want to update.
Yeah.
So we're not saying for
So what documents will be going away, so you just completely replace
So the
the,
zoning ordinance, subregs, design standards, so they'll be combined.
all three of those
Yeah.
documents? And then you'll create one
One
document?
unified.
Okay, UDC.
It's gonna help us out a lot.
Okay,
Evidently.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it takes a long time to try to find something.
Yeah.
It'll make it easier for the engineers going online to look at our, our code.
Make it easier.
design.
Fast.
And this is the proposed table of contents, that the new UDO will look like.
Okay, and all the setbacks and driveway length, those will be in the engineering specifications? Okay.
And in the zoning district regulations as well, dimensional requirements. I know we didn't bring those today, they're done, they've been reviewed, so that'll be in the final document for sure too. Today's focus was those big key items that needed some sprucing up mainly, but, yeah.
We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so
I'm
much.
excited about getting it going.
We are super excited too. But thank you.
Thank you.
Right, that it? Any other questions, comments? Adjourned.